Hey everybody, it's Megan from I Love Bodywork, continuing my 30 ideas in 30 days to increase your health, happiness, and wellness. So today's video is all about boundaries, and I feel like most people practice boundaries. They might just not quite realize that's what they're actually doing. And then on the other side of it is to increase your health, happiness, and wellness is to have well-placed boundaries, and you have to think about that or put some thought into it. So who I have here is Heba Saab. She's the owner of Hibs Yoga in Henderson. She is the lead teacher and mentor, and she is the woman that I did my first yoga teacher training with, who introduced me to forest yoga, where like most of this stuff is basically where it came from, at least for me, my personal health and wellness journey over the last 2.5 years to getting to this point of doing stuff like this is from this woman and forest yoga. So, can you explain what boundaries are, and in your opinion, why they're important?
Boundaries are expectations.
Yeah, cool.
And I feel like it's important because it creates safety. It creates an understanding of what there is to expect from a person or a relationship, so that both people are free to explore within that parameter of expectations and feel safe about what the expectation is.
That's awesome. So what would you say, could you give an example maybe of some negative aspects of maybe a situation where somebody might want to have some boundaries, or what happens when we don't have boundaries basically?
Sometimes we don't realize that we need boundaries,
Yeah.
and the boundaries don't get created until the need arises. So an example of that could be like what I'm dealing with right now is boundaries around childcare, so I can have time to practice.
Yes.
So that wasn't a boundary I thought I would need, because my practice has always been a priority, and it's always been very easy for me to prioritize my practice in my life. But then obviously once I had a baby, it was like, okay, obviously now there's a problem, because I'm expected to be the primary caretaker of this child and take care of the baby in every free minute of my time when I'm not working.
Yeah.
And so my practice kind of became very low on that list of priorities.
Yeah.
And that's when I had to have a conversation with my husband, like, I need to have a boundary around my practice time and about my expectation of you helping out with childcare when it's my practice time, so that I can have that time for myself.
I feel like that's super important, and I know that you see this all the time with students coming into the studio, and then also with my massage clients, I see this a lot. This, where the energy is going in your life, and oftentimes people that are really stressed out, even though the intention is a beautiful thing, you want to love your children and take care of your children or your spouse or whatever it is, your students or your clients, the energy, it's so much put into other people that there's like nothing left for you. So this is where boundaries become really important, and I think for some people they have an idea of boundaries as like rules, right? So like you have boundaries in your workplace. Different types of work will teach you different types of boundaries that are specific to your field. But what's really interesting about boundaries is that they should be spread across all layers of your life.
For me, as a professional yoga teacher, one of the things that is part of my personal ethics is like starting classes on time and ending classes on time. So as a professional in this yoga business, I've actually created a boundary around our classes start and end on time. And we even go so far as to lock the door when class starts. So if you are late, it's not a surprise that you're going to be locked out. And we actually have signs put up around the studio so that there is an expectation that is very clearly laid out, and people understand and know that they can't be late to class or they're going to be locked out. There is also some sort of follow through. Like when I create my boundary, I also have this sense of, if my boundary is not respected or if the expectation is not met, this is the consequence of that. So there's a natural consequence, which is like, you're going to be locked out. And there's also going to be a consequence of, like, let's say for some reason the door isn't locked. Like I'm here working at the desk and a student walks in late and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so late, can I come into class? Then I have to make a decision to be like, I'm sorry, you're late. We do have an expectation, a boundary. We have signs around the studio so nobody is let down because the boundary has been clearly stated, the expectation has been clearly stated.
Yes.
And that creates a sense of safety because then the people in the class aren't like distracted by people walking in late. People like the studio because there is that sense of expectation, and that creates a sense of safety for them to feel at ease when they're practicing, that no one's going to walk in, disrupt their practice. And I feel like that's one of those things where maybe for another, there's not a right or wrong in boundary setting. So maybe for another studio in a different type of culture, maybe they're creating a space for people who habitually run late to have a place to come if they're running late, and it's part of their studio culture to actually allow people to come in late, and that is an expectation that is clear. And then the students understand, when I sign up for the studio and I come to this class, people might be coming in late, and that's okay because when I'm late, the teacher's going to let me in too. So as long as the boundary is clearly set up and the expectations are clearly laid out, then there's no problem. The problem comes when that expectation isn't so clear and there's some sort of miscommunication. And that's why boundary setting is something that takes practice, because it's like, okay, this time I wasn't so clear, next time I need to be more clear. How can I create more clarity? Or maybe I'm okay with people being late. Oh, actually, you know what? This kind of sucks. It's not working out. I need to create a boundary around this.
Another thing with boundaries that I find very interesting, and I think it's what makes it a little bit hard for people, is that boundaries are personal and they're not personal. Meaning they're personal to you, as in you're setting them for a reason, whether it's a personal boundary like an at-home, like with your child, or it's a business boundary with your business, or a social relationship boundary. But what I found, like, personally when I started setting boundaries was I actually got a lot of, I don't want to call it negativity because it wasn't negativity. It was like
challenge.
Yes. Yes. There's exactly.
But why do you have this boundary? How much can we push this boundary?
Exactly. And it was like, well, but is that for like everybody else? But that's not for me, right? Or whatever it might be. And I'm like, but so what's interesting about it is I started to second guess it, and so that's where I really like that you said practice. It takes practice to do this, and it's constantly reiterating what your boundary is. And also what I found helpful was to reiterate to the people that it was creating challenges for, was that this is not personal. This is not you. And sometimes I do have boundaries with certain people, but it's not coming from a crazy place. What that has helped me to do is decrease my stress because the people around me know what to expect. I don't get into arguments about things. I find that navigating the waters of life and business with boundaries make it much easier to have different kinds of relationships with people.
Adriana just came, she's teaching class, and she just set a boundary that she wants us to be quiet. So Megan's going to close the door.
Yes, there's boundaries all day long. That's awesome. So is there anything that you would like to say, discuss, give an example? Anything that you think it's important for people to know or be aware of about boundaries, boundary setting?
The other thing that's coming to mind is people who continually disrespect boundaries as a way of like getting under someone's skin or getting back at them or hurting them in some way, because that's a good indication of people you want to steer clear from. When you have that one person who's constantly testing your boundaries or trying to make you change your boundaries or compromise what you stand for or don't stand for because of whatever personal reason, boundary setting is a good way to know if this person might be toxic for your life.
That is super important. Thank you so much for saying that. And it's a good reminder to have throughout your day and your life. You know, sometimes you can only do so much, but I feel like a reoccurring theme while I'm doing this project is you actually have a lot more control than you think. Every professional that I've talked to about these individual topics that have like a large that have a wealth of knowledge about the specific topics I'm talking with are all coming back to this idea that you have to control your settings a lot more than you think, or you need to control them in different ways. And a way of setting controls that are helpful to you is to set boundaries, and to have boundaries, and to go back to your boundaries, and change your boundaries when you need to.
But not to compromise what you stand for.
Yes.
So if you're like, this is what I stand for, this is part of my personal ethics or my professional ethics, not to be like, oh, okay, well this time, blah, 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 unless that's okay with you.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you want to post any of your own experiences or any examples of your own boundaries in your business, your personal, whatever you'd like, please post it on this thread. If you think that you know people in your friends or family or circles that would benefit from watching this video, please tag them and share it as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with our next video.